Poor Latina Waitress helped an elderly woman stranded in a thunderstorm, but what happened the next morning shattered everything she knew. Maria Rodriguez walked into work drenched and 7 minutes late, only to be humiliated and fired in front of everyone. She had no idea the stranger she rescued that night was watching from the corner booth, and the moment that woman stood up, every venomous word her supervisor spat would turn his entire world upside down. Before we continue, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything to us, and it helps us create more incredible stories like this one. Now let's dive in. The rain hammered down that Tuesday night, battering the windshield like it was trying to tear through the glass. Maria Rodriguez clutched the steering wheel of her rusted blue Honda, wipers fighting a losing battle to clear her view. The restaurant had kept her past midnight cleaning up after a private event, and exhaustion pulled at every muscle in her body. Her black uniform still smelled like grease and dishwater. All she craved was her bed and silence. Then she saw it. A silver Mercedes parked at an awkward angle on the shoulder, emergency lights pulsing weakly through the storm. The hood was propped open, steam rising in thin, ghostly wisps. As Maria slowed down, her headlights revealed an elderly black woman standing beside the vehicle, rain-soaked blazer clinging to her frame, one hand gripping the car door for support. No umbrella, no help, just expensive clothes soaked through, and a weary expression staring into the downpour. Maria hesitated. It was past midnight, the kind of hour when most people learn to keep driving. But she noticed how the woman's hands trembled, how she kept jabbing at a phone that clearly couldn't get a signal out here in the middle of nowhere. Maria exhaled slowly, pulled onto the shoulder behind the Mercedes, and cracked her window halfway. The sharp scent of wet pavement and burning oil filled her car. "You need help?" she called out. Her voice pierced through the storm. The woman turned, surprised, squinting through the rain. "My car won't start. No tow services are answering. I think I took a wrong exit." Maria reached across, unlocked the passenger door, and gestured. "You'll catch pneumonia out there. Get in before you wash away." The woman paused, sizing her up, a complete stranger offering rescue on a deserted highway. Then she nodded, pulled the door open, and climbed inside, water pooling immediately on the worn fabric seat. The heater sputtered and wheezed, but Maria maxed out anyway. The rattling hum filled the silence as they merged back onto the empty road. The woman's voice came out soft but sincere. "You didn't have to stop." Maria shrugged. Couldn't just leave somebody's grandmother melting in a hurricane. That pulled the faintest smile from the woman. She introduced herself as Eleanor Price, explained she'd been driving home from a late business dinner crosstown. The storm blindsided her halfway back, and her car quit shortly after. Maria listened but didn't dig for details. She just drove, the headlights cutting through sheets of rain, the rhythm of water drumming steadily against the roof. She brought Eleanor to her neighborhood, a cluster of aging apartment buildings shadowed by streetlights that barely worked. Inside her cramped studio apartment, Maria handed Eleanor a dry towel and a steaming mug of instant chicken noodle soup. The radiator clanked pitifully in the corner. Maria offered her only blanket, brushing off every protest. When Eleanor finally dozed off on the lumpy couch, Maria sat quietly near the window, watching the rain ease into a light drizzle. Her reflection looked exhausted, but at peace. She had done what felt right. Before sunrise, Maria left for her morning shift. The couch was empty. The blanket was folded perfectly. A handwritten note sat on the table. "Thank you for treating me like I mattered." Maria smiled softly, tucked the note into her apron pocket, and stepped back into the cool gray morning. The streets glistened, the air crisp and damp. She had no idea yet that the woman she'd rescued would walk back into her world, and that her next appearance would flip everything upside down. The morning crawled in cold and miserable. Maria's sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as she rushed to the cafe entrance 12 minutes behind schedule. Her hair was still wet, her breath coming fast from sprinting up the steep block. The smell of sizzling sausage and burnt toast slammed into her. Behind the counter, Derek Thompson was already barking commands. Sleeves rolled up, voice loud enough to carry over the breakfast crowd. "Rodriguez, you think the clock waits for you?" His tone dripped with disdain. Maria caught her breath, eyes down. "I'm so sorry, sir. My car." "Save it," he snapped, slamming a laminated menu on the counter. "We got a full house. Corporate's doing a surprise inspection, and you waltzing like you own the place?" A few customers glanced over. The line cook froze mid-flip. The clinking of silverware went silent. The tension pressed down like a weight. Maria tried again. "Steady. Calm. I helped someone last night." An older woman broke down in the storm. "I couldn't just—" Derek waved her off. "You think sob stories pay your rent? You're late. That's the only fact that matters." He turned toward the dining area, voice climbing. "If anybody else wants to show up whenever they feel like it, maybe you can join her on the unemployment line." A couple people snickered nervously. Others looked away. Maria's throat tightened. "Please, Mr. Thompson. I've been here 3.5 years. You know I'm never—" He jabbed a finger toward the exit. "You're done. Hand over your apron. I don't need excuses. I need—" Professionalism. Dead silence. Even the coffee machine seemed to stop gurgling. Maria untied her apron, fingers shaking, jaw clenched tight. She set it carefully on the counter, refusing to let him see her crack. As she turned toward the door, a man in a booth whispered to his wife, "That's messed up. She's the sweetest one here." Maria pushed through the door into the drizzle, the bell above chiming one final time. The rain was lighter now, but it cut deeper than last night's storm. She pulled her jacket tighter and kept walking. Behind her, inside the cafe, Derek smirked and adjusted his collar. "Perfect timing," he muttered. "Corporate's finally showing up today. Last thing I need is bleeding hearts, making the place look unprofessional." Outside, Maria stopped at the intersection, her reflection rippling in a puddle at her feet. She had done the right thing, she was certain, but right didn't keep the lights on. She didn't notice the silver Mercedes idling across the street, its tinted window lowering just a crack. Inside, Eleanor Price watched her walk away, expression unreadable, the same note Maria had left her resting on the passenger seat. Eleanor straightened her blazer, glanced back at the cafe's flickering neon sign, and said quietly to herself, "So this is where she works." She pressed the accelerator. What came next would change both their lives forever. By early afternoon, the cafe hummed with nervous energy. The rain had cleared, and pale sunlight streamed to the front windows. The smell of fresh pastries and dark roast filled the space. Derek Thompson stood near the register, obsessively reorganizing the napkin dispensers for the 10th time. He was jittery, anxiety hidden behind overconfidence. The staff exchanged glances. No one had ever met the mysterious corporate owner, and today was supposed to be the day. At exactly 1:15 p.m., the door swung open. The bell chimed once. A tall, silver-haired black woman stepped inside, dressed in a charcoal pantsuit, leather briefcase in hand, and a presence that commanded silence without a single word. The entire room seemed to straighten instinctively. The line cook paused mid-motion. A server froze with a coffee pot hovering. Derek hurried forward with a salesman's grin plastered across his face. "Mrs. Price?" "Welcome, ma'am," he said, voice climbing with forced warmth. "Everything's running like clockwork, clean, efficient, exactly how you'd expect." Eleanor Price scanned the cafe. Her eyes swept across the booths, the counter, the gleaming fixtures, the staff trying not to stare. But when her gaze landed on the empty section where Maria used to work, her jaw tightened ever so slightly. "Where's the young woman from last night?" she asked, voice calm but pointed. Derek blinked. "I'm sorry, ma'am." "Maria Rodriguez," Eleanor said again. "The waitress who worked here yesterday morning." The supervisor forced a chuckle. "Oh, her. I had to let her go. I'm afraid. Chronic lateness. Poor work ethic. Not the kind of representation you'd want for your brand." Eleanor's expression didn't shift, but the silence that followed sliced through the ambient noise like a knife. She turned toward the cook. "Is that accurate?" The cook stared at his shoes. "No, ma'am. Maria was the best employee we had." Derek's smile flickered. "People tend to exaggerate. I maintain high standards here." Eleanor stepped closer. You fired her this morning? Yes, ma'am. For cause. Eleanor nodded slowly. Then she said, Call her back. Right now. The color drained from Derek's face. Ma'am, that's really not necessary. I said, Call her back. The room went cemetery quiet. 7 minutes later, the bell chimed again. Maria stepped through the door, still wearing her wrinkled uniform, confusion painted across her face. Every pair of eyes turned as she walked in, uncertain why she'd been summoned. Eleanor's expression softened when she saw her. Miss Rodriguez, she said, voice steady but warm. You helped me last night when no one else would. You didn't know who I was, and you didn't ask. You just saw someone who needed help. Whispers rippled through the cafe. The cook dropped his spatula. A server gasped audibly. Eleanor continued, You showed me what this business should stand for, so I'm making this official. Maria Rodriguez is reinstated as assistant manager, effective immediately. Derek's jaw dropped. You can't be serious. I'm entirely serious, Eleanor interrupted. You wanted to impress me, Mr. Thompson. Congratulations. You just did in all the wrong ways. The staff broke into quiet applause. Relief washed through the room like a wave. Maria stood frozen, tears brimming in her eyes. Eleanor smiled faintly. You gave me kindness in the storm. I intend to return it with dignity. The bell above the door jingled again as new customers walked in, unaware they were stepping into a cafe that had just been transformed forever. Weeks later, the cafe was alive again. The mornings buzzed with regulars. The espresso machine hummed constantly, and genuine laughter echoed through the booths. Under Maria's thoughtful leadership, everything ran smoother than it ever had. The tips increased. Customers lingered longer, and Eleanor's visits became less about supervision and more about satisfaction. But not everyone shared that satisfaction. Derek Thompson's smile had turned hollow. He worked the front counter now. No longer in charge, just another employee answering to the woman he once humiliated in front of everyone. Each time she walked past, polite and unbothered, something darker festered behind his calm facade. He stayed late after closing, pacing the kitchen, muttering under his breath. Then the money started disappearing. At first, it was small, 40 here, 60 there. Maria caught it during a late-night drawer count. She checked twice, then 3 times. No errors. She didn't accuse anyone, but the worry settled deep in her chest like a stone. When it happened again, she went directly to Eleanor. I balanced every register personally, Maria said. This is deliberate. Someone's trying to make it look like I'm stealing. Eleanor studied her face carefully. Do you have suspicions? Nothing I can prove, Maria said quietly. Eleanor nodded. Then we'll get proof. That evening, discreet security cameras were installed near the registers. Eleanor brought in a quiet man in civilian clothes, a private investigator. No one in the cafe knew, except Eleanor and Maria. Days passed. Maria worked as normal, smiling through the unease gnawing at her. Derek kept to himself, but his eyes lingered too long on the drawer Maria used. Then, one Thursday evening, while the rain returned outside, the camera captured everything. Derek waited until Maria left early to meet a vendor. He opened her register, pulled out a stack of bills, then replaced her count slip with one he'd prepared earlier. He even smiled to himself, whispering, "Let's see you explain this away." The next morning, Eleanor called a mandatory staff meeting. Everyone gathered around the main counter, confused and uneasy. The investigator placed a small tablet on the counter and pressed play. The footage rolled. The silence was crushing. Derek's hand, the money, the smirk, everything. He went pale as a ghost. "That's fake," he shouted. "She doctored it. She's setting me up?" Maria didn't move, didn't speak. Eleanor's voice cut through the chaos, calm but ice cold. "You framed the woman who saved me. You tried to destroy her reputation and my business. I built this place on integrity, and you poisoned it." 2 police officers stepped in quietly from the back office. The handcuffs clicked before Derek could say another word. He screamed accusations and curses as they escorted him out, but no one looked up. No one said goodbye. The rest of the day, the cafe stayed strangely quiet. Maria worked her shift as usual, professional but distant. When Eleanor approached later that evening, she said softly, "You handled that with remarkable grace. Most people would have lost their composure." Maria smiled faintly. "I learned something that night in the storm. Some storms you weather standing still. Others pass on their own." The neon sign flickered against the wet windows outside. This time, its reflection looked clearer. 8 months later, the cafe looked nothing like the place Maria had been fired from. The windows sparkled, the new sign above the entrance read Rainfall Cafe, and every table was occupied. People came not just for the food, but for the legend. The story about a waitress who helped a stranger and transformed both their destinies. Inside, the atmosphere was warm, filled with laughter and the rich aroma of fresh brewed coffee. Maria moved gracefully through the dining area, tablet in hand, offering a genuine smile to everyone she passed. Staff members worked seamlessly under her guidance, proud to be part of something built on respect instead of fear. Eleanor sat in her usual corner booth, quietly observing Maria work. The local news had covered her story months ago, calling her the heart behind Rainfall Cafe's renaissance. When a journalist asked what made Eleanor give Maria partial ownership, she'd answered simply, "She showed me compassion when she had every reason not to." That's worth more than any profit margin. That evening, Eleanor stood and called for everyone's attention. "We built this place on kindness," she said. Maria reminded us what that truly means. Today, I'm making it official. She's not just assistant manager anymore. She's my business partner. The staff erupted into applause. Maria covered her mouth for a moment, overwhelmed. Eleanor handed her an envelope. "Legal documents confirming equal partnership. You've earned every single bit of this," she said. Later, as the lights dimmed and the last customers filtered out, Maria stepped outside for fresh air. Across the street, under the flickering glow of a gas station sign, a familiar figure wiped down car windows. Derek Thompson. His shoulders slumped, uniform damp from the evening mist. For a long moment, Maria just watched him. Then she crossed the street, calm and composed. He froze as she stopped beside him. Without a word, she handed him a sealed envelope. "What's this?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Your name's on it," Maria said. "Open it when you're ready." She turned and walked away. When he finally tore open, he found a small check made out to a local homeless shelter and a donation receipt in his name. Beneath it, a handwritten note. "Everyone deserves a second chance. I got mine." Back at the cafe, Maria flipped the sign from closed to open. The morning light crept through the glass, reflecting off the polished countertops. She tied her apron, her movements calm and purposeful. The first customer walked in, shaking rain from his jacket. Maria smiled warmly. "Good morning," she said. "Welcome to Rainfall Cafe, where kindness is always on the menu.